everyone. Welcome back to Resistance Live. It's the 24th of June, 2025. And there used to be a running joke here that every time I tried to take some time off, the shit would hit the fan. And lo and behold, that appears to be what happened over the weekend. So I just want to thank you all for your patience and for understanding that I couldn't go live, even though there was like a big demand for me to do an emergency broadcast. I was with my kids and there just wasn't any way to kind of like pull it off. But we're here now and we have so much to talk about, including all the developments related to the bombing of Iran and Trump's meltdown this morning and what's happening with the budget bill and what's happening with ICE and how to cope with the stress of it all, I guess is kind of where we're going. I know my view is a little bit different today, by the way. I just want to mention this at the start. We had a huge camera meltdown yesterday while we were trying to film some videos for our new YouTube channel, which you can find under the Ripple Effect Institute. And so if I'm a little different of a view today, that's why. And hopefully my camera's going to make it straight through all of this, but it's super hot here and equipment doesn't always work the way it's supposed to. Okay. Today I am wearing a sleeveless, cream colored tunic of sorts. My hair is down. I'm a pink skin, green eyed, dirty blonde haired woman. I'm wearing my thick gold hoops. My bookshelf and my yellow utility cart are behind me. And I'm coming to you as always from occupied Muncie, Lenape, and Mohican land. All right. So as we all know, on Saturday night, the U.S. bombed Iran at Israel's essentially request. And then we had retaliation efforts by Iran. And then Trump randomly announced last night that there was a ceasefire when Israel reported that it had not received any ceasefire documents. And then there appeared to be a ceasefire, and then it was immediately broken 2 hours later. And now Trump is having meltdowns on the White House lawn, dropping F-bombs about Israel and Iran not knowing what the F they're doing. The full world stage humiliation of the United States has to be complete by now. I wish it was complete, but I doubt that it is because we're being governed by a madman, as everybody knows. And from the standpoint of where I sit right now, all of this is in its own way predictable. Now, there's a lot of rumors flying around that Trump wants a Nobel Peace Prize. I will just tell you, maybe he does. And sure, there are plenty of fawning sycophants inside MAGA who would be more than happy to try to lift him up in that direction. And perhaps that's why he's mad. But the real problem with all of this is that he violated the Constitution and the law by allowing our troops to go bomb Iran without congressional approval. There's no question that he violated the War Powers Act by doing that. And he's now in a full-on narcissistic implosion because he didn't get the result that he thought he wanted. You all know, if you've been here for a while, that I'm a fan of the F-bomb, and that's not really what my issue is with this morning's implosion. It actually has more to do with the perception of America on the international stage. And, you know, it's not okay to scream at people that you want peace and then, you know, say they don't know what the F they're doing and assume that that's an effective diplomatic strategy. I know that's like the understatement of the year, but that's where we are. Now, I do have to mention something about fallout from the bombing of Iran that I just want to issue a word of caution about, okay? This morning on the Patreon feed, you all know you can head on over to patreon.com/resistancelive and become a paid subscriber if you want to ask me questions before every broadcast. This morning on the Patreon feed, there were several questions about these rumored sleeper cells that were going to be activated inside the United States. So I have to say that this kind of Islamophobia, let alone when it's being reported from anonymous sources inside the Trump administration, is something that we should all be extremely wary of, okay? Those of us who have been around for a long time know that this rumor of sleeper cells inside the United States has been tossed around from time to time for political gain ever since 9/11. And I think that fundamentally, the reason why that article dropped within 12 hours of the U.S. bombing Iran was to try to fabricate a rationale for the bombing itself after the fact and to terrify Americans into supporting what is a wildly unpopular military effort. In case you didn't see the polling, there was a YouGov poll that came out on Sunday that showed that 85% of the country does not want to go to war against Iran. So, one way to drum up support for a war in Iran that's wildly unpopular with an already wildly unpopular president would be to say, oh, you should be really afraid. There's Islamic terrorists inside America who are going to set off bombs, and we have to do this to protect you. So again, no one should be taking that kind of thing seriously, let alone without sourced reporting, okay? You didn't see an official from the Pentagon walking out and saying this, at least I didn't. This was all rumored reporting handed to ABC News, who, by the way, we all know has already gotten itself into trouble multiple times because they haven't done what Trump wanted. And then they capitulated, reported by them in a manner that really is not well sourced. And, again, is something that appears to be designed to make Americans afraid of Muslims yet again. Okay. So I'm not walking around concerned about activated sleeper cells inside America. I mean, never say never, but I'm going to tell you, I don't think there's any real threat. And from the standpoint of where we are right now, it's anybody's guess how this is all going to play out in the Middle East. And, Trump has opened a can of worms. It's not going to end well for him. We all know that. He knows that. That's one of the reasons why he's so upset at this point, because he hasn't gotten what he thought he was going to be able to get by his mighty show of force. And what happens next inside the Middle East is a huge question mark. Russia came out over the weekend and said they were perfectly happy to hand off a nuclear weapon to Iran, even though Iran literally did not have the capacity to make a nuclear weapon, despite the fact that we actually bombed them using that as a justification. So the thing that I just want people to be very thoughtful about right now is, as always, the issue of who wins if something that is rumored turns out to be true. Who wins? Okay. And, the thing to remember here is that Trump's poll numbers are plunging. He knows that. They were already bad with regard to ICE and the ongoing invasion of Los Angeles by the U.S. Marines. And this certainly isn't making it any better. So how does he turn that around? By terrifying people, which is what he kind of tends to do all the time. So again, you got to be really careful about that kind of thing when you see it, even if it's from like mainstream news sources at this point, because I think we can all agree that the mainstream media has been kind of like letting everybody down. All right. We have to talk about the Supreme Court's ruling yesterday that was deeply, deeply disturbing. And also from a legal perspective, really confusing. Okay. So for anybody who missed it, the Supreme Court agreed to by a 6-3 margin on the shadow docket, agreed to allow the Trump administration to resume rendering, because this is not even deportation, people are not being sent to their home countries, rendering people who ICE has picked up to third-party countries without adequate due process. There was a very loud dissent written by Sonia Sotomayor with very distinct language, I guess is the way to put it, about the horrors that are going to come to pass as a result of the decision. This, by the way, was immediately attacked in the lower court that had issued the original decision, because there were certain people who had since been deported to Djibouti. You all remember we talked about this when it began a couple of weeks ago on the broadcast, who were not subject to the Supreme Court's ruling. And so the lawyers are now seeking to nonetheless hold the Trump administration accountable for violating the lower court order. The problem with the Supreme Court's ruling, in addition to the fact that it allows Trump essentially to sell people into slavery in foreign countries, and I'm not exaggerating that, that's literally what it allows him to do now, okay? They can deport people to CICOT in El Salvador and force them into slave labor without adequate due process. They can send them to Libya. They can send them to South Sudan. Okay. It literally is permission for the Trump administration to engage in human trafficking. That's not an exaggeration. That is what the 6-justice conservative majority did yesterday. We should have no qualms about calling it like it is. That's exactly what it is. Okay. All that said, this is going to result in a significant amount of confusion in the lower courts, as legal commentators like myself have been pointing out since yesterday. Why? Because the Supreme Court previously ruled that Trump couldn't use the Alien Enemies Act to deport people without due process. So what does this mean now when they pick people up under the Alien Enemies Act and then seek to send them to places like CICOT? Is that okay from the Supreme Court or not? And there's already some developing confusion in the lower courts about this. Fortunately enough, the district court judges who understand what's at stake and don't like the Supreme Court's ruling, like the judge who had initially entered the order that the Supreme Court dealt with, he came back last night and said, no, you still have to provide due process to the 6 people that you stuck on a plane to Djibouti in violation of my prior court order. So we now have this crazy situation set up where the district courts are essentially going to war with the Supreme Court. How this plays out, it's a really good question. Because, the Supreme Court's supposed to be the ultimate law of the land. And if the district courts are like, no, you're not going to take away my power to enforce my orders, or anything that falls outside the scope of this order, which, by the way, did not have a majority opinion attached to it because it was handled on the shadow docket. It only had a dissent. We have no idea what the rationale is behind it. I'm going to do what I want. And so this is a place where the judicial system, unsurprisingly, has now been thrown into conflict because of the 6 sycophants on the Supreme Court who want to let Trump do all of these horrible things, violate human rights, send people, including 70 American citizens who have currently been deported, out of the country, because it's not deportation, it's extraordinary rendition, but they've picked up American citizens and sent them to foreign countries. The Supreme Court is apparently fine with this, as long as he doesn't do it under the AEA. Very confusing, okay? So the way that this goes is not in the form of an appeal. Like, I want to make this clear. There is no appeal from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest law of the land. But lawyers can go back to the district court and say, well, this particular group of people isn't covered by that order. Or these particular people were picked up under the AEA, which the Supreme Court said we can't do, right? So again, it's a hot mess and really amoral on top of it, like really disgusting. If you were upset by that Supreme Court opinion yesterday, you had every right to be. And I know it took a lot of people out in our Patreon community because people were talking about it. And all I can say about this is that the way to change this is through, obviously, the people, but also through legislation. And, we have a ways to go on that, unfortunately, because we need both houses of Congress or a veto-proof majority. All right. That brings me to the budget bill, because we have a bunch of things happening with the budget bill now that, I don't know, I suppose hold a little bit of promise. I don't, and then we have some other things that continue to go on that are like horrific, okay? Like we have Mike Johnson standing up saying Medicare isn't going to be cut when literally in the bill, there are cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. Like literally in the bill, they are cutting Medicare. And he's standing up and lying about it to the American people because Trump said there weren't cuts, but there are, okay? The good news is that the Byrd Amendment has been activated in a number of instances now. So for people who don't understand what the Byrd Rule is, the Byrd Rule is a procedural rule that allows a senator to raise a point of order in the reconciliation process for the budget about anything that doesn't have to do with fiscal matters, okay? So that means now that actually 2 things that we were terribly worried about that are in the budget bill are now unlikely to pass. Because once a point of order has been raised by a senator, the Senate parliamentarian has to rule on whether or not a particular provision inside a bill is actually a fiscal matter. If the parliamentarian says, no, it's not, then it takes 60 senators to override the point of order, all right? And of course, the Republicans don't have a 60 senator majority. They've got 53. So the good news about this is that now a few things are out of the budget bill. The land sale that everybody was worried about, hundreds of thousands of acres rather, of private land, not private land, public land, park land that was going to be sold off to the highest bidder, that provision can now not be included in the budget reconciliation process. Similarly, the one that I was really, really, really worried about, which was among many others, which was the provision that attempted to gut the power of the courts to enforce contempt or require a bond to be put up by a plaintiff in order to enforce contempt proceedings against the Trump administration, is gone. Byrd Rule has been invoked on that, cannot be included in the budget reconciliation bill. But the budget bill is still horrific. Cuts to SNAP, cuts to Medicare, cuts to Medicaid, cuts to education. It's really, really bad. I was out yesterday getting something done in my neighborhood, and I had a conversation with someone who was a service worker about this, and she was like, wait a minute, they're cutting SNAP? My mom's on SNAP. They're cutting SNAP. They're going to cut people's food stamps. People are going to starve to death. So very important this week to make your phone calls to your senators and demand that the budget bill be voted down. And you should talk about the particular clauses in it that worry you the most. Yes, it was millions of acres. Sorry, you guys. But you should talk about these provisions. You should talk about the things that the way this is going to impact your life, the life of your loved ones, the lives of people that you care about, how they're going to be adversely impacted by it. Because this bill, it is no joke. When we call it the MAGA murder bill, that's what it is. People are going to die just so that greedy corporations and the uber rich save more on their taxes. It's disgusting. And we should all make your voices heard about this, like this week and all week long. Speaking of which, there is another reason to call your senators this week, particularly today. Please make your phone calls today. Please make them today about the nomination of Emile Beauvais to the Third Circuit Federal Court of Appeals. Okay. There's breaking news about this morning. Many of you will remember that when Emile Beauvais was first, well, around the time that he was first nominated as, Deputy Attorney General, one of the things that happened was that he ordered U.S. attorneys in the Southern District of New York to dismiss the case against Mayor Eric Adams because in exchange, Adams had agreed to allow ICE to raid New York City. Everybody remember this? And what happened was that a whole stack of DOJ attorneys, like a dozen, I think by the time it was done, quit rather than sign off on the papers that Emile Beauvais wanted them to sign off on. Then, and this is the breaking news scandal from this morning, we found out that when the DOJ, as the attorneys for the government, lost on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's petition, and when the government was ordered to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the United States, where, by the way, he was arraigned last week, and now he's been ordered released on bail, but there's huge questions about whether or not that's going to happen. That's another story. When they lost that motion, Emile Beauvais told the lawyers in the Department of Justice who were working on that case that their response to being ordered to bring home someone against whom there was no evidence, right? Someone who was here legally, they had no case, there was no reason for him to be sent to CCOT. When they lost that case, Emile Beauvais told the lawyers in the DOJ to respond to that order by essentially saying, F you to the court. And again, I have to remind you, this is somebody who is like all in on Donald Trump, was Donald Trump's personal attorney in the felony case against him in New York State, has all along been willing to violate the law himself in order to enforce the will of Trump and Stephen Miller. Now, because he has been so scandal-ridden inside the Department of Justice, Trump has nominated him to a lifetime appointment on the Third Circuit Federal Court of Appeals, which covers like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, I believe. That's a lifetime appointment to an incredibly important and prestigious position in the federal appeals circuit mechanisms. He cannot be granted that position. So you need to call your senators right now and ask them to vote down his nomination. All right. Like, this is a no-brainer. This is a really evil dude. There are whistleblowers from the DOJ who have come out this morning with new statements about what he did. Like, he's bad. And we do not want him in a position where he is in the intermediate, like one step below the Supreme Court, which, by the way, is I think where this is going, because he's not going to be able to be nominated to the Supreme Court if a justice retires, if he's not already on a Circuit Court of Appeals bench. Like, very unlikely that would happen. So I think what's happening here is Trump is setting him up to be the next Supreme Court justice. And we cannot allow him to get into that pipeline. Like, it's a hard no. So please call your senators and tell them to vote down the nomination of Emile Beauvais. Like, it's really critical. This one, I mean, all of them matter because lifetime appointments to the federal bench, but this one really matters a lot. Okay. Please make your calls to your senators today. Okay. I don't want anybody to forget that ICE is still occupying Los Angeles in conjunction with the National Guard and the Marine Corps. If you are not aware of what is happening in LA because it's fallen out of the news cycle, which is shocking, you should know that essentially it has sent people into hiding, including American citizens of Latino descent. The streets of LA in commonly populated Latino areas and at markets, that have historically been in Latino districts. They are empty. There are efforts being put underway in LA to fundraise for food cart vendors who are of Latino descent so that they can stay home and not starve to death because they can't do business for fear of being picked up. Like, that's where we're at. Do not forget about LA. It is a test case for every other city around the country. And by the way, the budget bill does provide for additional funding for ICE so they can do this in your town and your city and your little rural area if they feel like it. All right. Really important to remember that, like, none of that has gone away either. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay. I do want to remind you all that there are ongoing efforts, though, by everyday American citizens to stop ICE from rounding people up. If you missed the video of the woman who demanded to see at Home Depot, who demanded to see the badges of brown shirts that showed up, and they couldn't provide badges to her, and she ran them off. It's somewhere on my Blue Sky feed. You may have to scroll down, but it was quite an incredible moment where she was like, no, you are not taking anybody out of this location unless I see your badge and a warrant. No. Average everyday person. And she ran them off herself. The other thing that I want to say about this that raises some real questions is there have been a lot of rumors flying around about bounty hunters being kind of, I don't want to say like given the authority of ICE because they're not legally allowed to do that, but have essentially been offered money to go out dressed as ICE to round people up. It's very odd that if you watch that video, when this woman asks for badges, he says, my badge is right here, because it says police on it. She says, that's not your badge. I need your badge number. Where's your badge? And none of them could turn one over. So it raises real questions. And there's other videos where it appears that people show up dressed like ICE, but they're not actually ICE and they're rounding people up. Big questions about what's actually happening right now in California and around the country in this regard, because I will remind you all that ICE doesn't have the manpower to carry out what Stephen Miller has requested. So very big questions about that. Again, I want to remind everybody, you can take bystander intervention trainings through Vision Change Win, and I believe the Progressive Safety Alliance is still offering them. But there's other, Right to Be also does bystander training intervention online on a weekly basis. So very important for people to get trained in how to address all of that, because I'm just going to tell you, ICE is everywhere right now. And you should expect that at some point they're going to show up in your town if they have not done so already. Okay. Somebody asked me to talk for a few minutes about kind of coping with the mental health challenges of this moment. And I have a couple of things that I want to say about it. I actually had a phone call this morning with a friend of mine who is in cognitive health. And one of the things that she is studying right now is the way in which this phenomenon that is now being referred to as digital dementia is causing signs of dementia in much younger people. And it is being attributed to nonstop doom scrolling on our phones. That it is impacting our capacity to pay attention, to listen to one another, to actually process information, to see larger contexts of what's actually going on, to make accurate determinations about whether we ourselves are truly at risk. And, you know, this is one reason why her advice right now is to actually like put down the phone, like put it down or get off your laptop. Like when you are overwhelmed, walk away, and like walk away for a long time. Okay. This, by the way, is one reason I'm just going to be really honest with you guys, why I didn't do an emergency broadcast this weekend, because I knew when we started bombing Iran that if I didn't disconnect, I was going to be in that space all weekend long, when what I really wanted to be doing was connecting with my kids and spending the long weekend with them, right? One of the things that I have to remind people of here is that we all need emotional support in these moments. And your emotional support is not a Threads feed, a Blue Sky feed, people that you talk to online, or parasocial relationships. That's not adequate emotional support. Okay. In moments of stress, you need to be face to face with actual human beings who love and care about you and who you love and care about. That in and of itself can be reassuring because it makes us feel less alone. We're not stuck in our houses, like doing nothing. We're not constantly like in this space of like, oh my God, what's the next horrible thing that's going to happen? We have to completely set things down and move away from it until we are re-regulated. All right. And one thing that I will also just tell you about this that I think is really critically important, I say this every week, and I have these moments where I think like nobody listens to this on the broadcast, but it's really critical. Okay. Please don't ignore this. You need daily practices right now that keep you grounded. Daily. They should be as regular as brushing your teeth. And what do I mean by that? I mean, if you don't have a meditation practice yet, you should pick one up. I mean that if you don't have a practice of like getting outside into the sunshine as early as you can in the morning, if the weather allows that where you are and you're not immune compromised and you're able to leave your house, like you should do that. It will help to regulate your brain chemistry to get out into the sunshine first thing in the morning if you're able to do that, okay? You should make sure that no matter what you're doing, you're at least going out for a walk every day if you're able to do that, right? Connecting in some way with people outside of your own home, okay? Having conversations with people about things that are not related to politics, right? And of course, one of the best remedies to all of this, as I have been saying here now for like 8.5 years, is to get involved locally where you live. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of that. I have gotten deeply involved in some work here. I'm not going to give it away because you all know how I feel about like privacy and my location and my kids and everything else. But I've gotten very involved here recently with an organization that is deeply committed to social justice. And for the last 2 weeks, there's been a meeting every Monday night. I did mine yesterday with a group of between like 6 and 20 people about like, what are we planning for now? How are we pulling more people into the work that we're doing? What's happening? What do we see? What are our values? How are we going to act on them? Right? And to be able to sit in a room with people who actually really care about moving the needle forward, who are like, I'm going to show up for this work no matter what they're doing. No matter what they're doing. Because as Mariam Kaba has been saying a lot over the last few days, the work is endless. Like we're not going to get to a finish line in our lifetimes because nobody does, right? The key here is to remember that because the battle will continue, because the work will continue, if you do not take breaks, you will not be able to continue the work. And also that when you are with people who understand what we need to do right now and are actually doing it, you will remember that power resides with us. And it may not feel that way all the time. It may not feel that way when people are making jokes about World War III, but truly, we all have no idea how this regime is going to come to an end. But I'm going to tell you something. It's going to come to an end. Every single fascist regime in history has fallen. We don't know when and we don't know how, but it will happen. One way or another, it will happen. And the thing that you have to keep your eyes on right now is what you plan to do to be a part of the solution. Okay? I know it's really scary out there. Believe me, I'm not immune to this, right? I know that there are moments where people are like just flat out terrified and unable to function. And the thing that will get you out of that is daily habitual practices that keep you in your body and grounded, and then doing work with people who are committed to tearing down the pillars that support this regime. That's what helps. And again, I'll repeat this over and over again as many times as I need to, but I've been saying this here for 8.5 years. And I'm telling you, if you do not engage in daily practices to keep yourself grounded and sane, this is a situation right now that would dysregulate even the best of us, right? You have to disconnect when you're feeling dysregulated. You have to commit to daily practices and getting face-to-face with people who care about you. And then you've got to get involved, if you are at all able, in actually doing the work, okay? And the work is not posting memes on Facebook. The work is face-to-face in your own community, working for social justice. That's it, okay? And again, I'm going to say, if you're overwhelmed, going to a meeting like the meeting that I went to last night will change your viewpoint. It'll especially change your viewpoint if people are like, wow, you have great ideas, or wow, let's all work together on this new initiative, or wow, let's see what we're going to do in the next 6 months. Because that's the future that we're out there building. So really critical to keep all of that in mind. And I don't want to neglect that, obviously those of us with trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, those of us with anxiety disorders or clinical depression, please do not neglect your meds. Don't neglect your mental health care. Make sure that you're doing what you need to do to stabilize yourself, okay? But I'm just going to say it again. There are people in this community, because I know who you all are, and I follow some of you online, and a lot of you follow me, almost all of you follow me, where I worry about you guys, because I see you online, the way that you're posting is like you're screaming at the top of your lungs. And what I want to say to you in those moments is please go take care of yourself, right? We have no control over what Iran does next. We have no control over whether or not Trump decides he's going to follow Bibi into a war. Okay, we have no control over that. We can show up and protest. We can make our voices heard. But really what we probably need to do more than anything else is regulating our own central nervous systems and taking care of people in our own communities. Like, that's where the answer is. Dual power, building up systems that support people while other systems crumble. That's the answer. Okay. And it will make you feel better. Like, it really will. I promise. But please do the things that you need to do on a daily basis to take care of yourself. It's like non-negotiable right now. Like, if I skip a day of my meditation practice, I'm a mess. Like, I mean, like, that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but I'm not myself is the way to put it. And if I spend 6 hours face down in the phone, you can damn well believe my kids notice the difference. So please, please be very thoughtful about how you are managing current events right now. Take care of yourselves. And this is the other thing. I'm going to remind you, all of these platforms, and particularly like these devices, are designed to be addictive. Okay. I know putting them down can feel like it's hard. I read a stat the other day that like we check our phones without even thinking about it, like 270 times on average a day. It's insane. Like, you can put your phone down for 3 hours and trust me, you're going to know if something happens, but you'll also feel a lot better actually if you missed it. I'll just say that. And then you can come back to it when you've had a nice dinner out with a friend. So again, make the right choices. Please make the right choices right now, because like these times are stressful and really hard and revolting in many instances and scary. Okay. And it's all of our jobs, particularly those of us who are really working for change actively, to manage ourselves so that we do not get lost to the battle. Okay. So that's my best advice on that. And, there's lots of great brain floss, cotton candy kind of stuff to stream on Netflix if you would care to. My kids and I have been binging all sorts of shit to just enjoy ourselves. All right. That's it for today. I will be back tomorrow, regular time. I'm here all week, regular time. Friday, there will be a progressive coffee hour at 3 p.m. Eastern for all of our Patreon subscribers. Please go join us over there if you have not yet already. And I will remind you that our educational series that used to be on this channel on Mondays has now moved over to our new channel, which is called the Ripple Effect Institute, after our new strategic incubator for high-level activists, organizers, and change agents. By the way, reminder on that. You can apply for a free strategy call with me, and I'm going to link that above when we're done, where there's all this headspace above my head because my camera got all messed up. I'm going to link that and make sure that you all have it. You can apply for a free strategy call with me if you're interested in learning more about the Ripple Effect Institute and how it can help you achieve a long-term legacy level impact for future generations, and how you can do it with resilience and in community with other great people who are making a huge impact where they live. So I will drop that link above. I'll also drop it into the comments. And yeah, please subscribe to the Patreon if you haven't already. I'll just remind everybody that that is really the bread and butter that allows this broadcast to continue every day. And it allows me to pay the staff behind the scenes who do all that work. So if you have not yet subscribed to support the broadcast, I would really appreciate it if you would consider doing that. All right. I will catch you all here tomorrow at regular time. Hang in there, everybody. I know it's not easy, but we're in this together. All right. I'll see you then. Bye.